Hello and welcome to the very first session of the Year with Jesus. Most sessions will be 8 to 10 minutes long, but this one might be a little bit longer because I've got some introductory comments I need to make. One thing I've always liked to do is to look at things from a slightly different perspective. So whether you're familiar with Jesus or not, I hope you'll find the content fresh, stimulating and helpful for your life, because at the end of the day, if what we learn does not help us do life better, then there's not much point. I don't want to waste your time with anything less. I'm what you would call a follower of Jesus. I'm a believer. I have been for many years now. However, I still feel very much the learner. And every time I look at Jesus, I discover something new that I hadn't seen before. So I'm excited for this journey as much as any of you might be. Now, if you're a skeptic or just here for the popcorn, a huge welcome to you. It's not my job to try and convince you of anything or make you believe something. I simply want to share some things that I've learned about Jesus and invite you to take a look. I certainly don't pretend to have all the answers for the world's problems. Sorry to disappoint you. So here's how we're going to do it. Our Year with Jesus will be divided into various themes spread out over the whole year, actually for 50 weeks. 2 separate sessions a week, Sunday nights and Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Sydney, Australian time. Each session will be 10 minutes long, and then I'll stay online so that I can interact with you and answer any questions. It'll be available through both the Year with Jesus Facebook group or the Year with Jesus YouTube channel. If you can't watch the content live, then you can watch it later. The only difference is the live interaction will not be active, but you can still comment on the content, of course. I've designed an outline of all the sessions, which is available as a link for download. You can print it out and tick the ones you've done and come back and find the ones you've missed. Let me know if you can't see how to access the outline, or if you can't find a session, I want to help you. Be sure to follow in Facebook or subscribe in YouTube so that you get a notification to remind you when we're on. If you've got any questions, just leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. Mostly we'll be looking at the 4 Gospels, which are the 4 accounts of Jesus' life on earth, but we'll also be dipping into what Christians call the Old Testament because it provides important context. So my primary text is going to be the Bible. If you're unsure about the reliability of the Bible as a book, and that's okay. Unfortunately, in this course, we don't have opportunity to explore the Bible's reliability as a source, but there is other material I can point you to if that's an area of interest. I just want you to know that I'm operating on the premise that the Bible is a reliable source. Now, there are various translations of the Bible out there. Some of these translations go for a more literal word-for-word translation, but because that can get kind of clunky going from Hebrew into English or from Greek into English, others go for more free-flowing, phrase-by-phrase, readable translations, and most translations sit between those 2 spectrums. So I know there's strong opinions of some people out there about Bible translations and which one you should use, but I'm going to use the one that's used by the vast majority of English speakers, and that's the New International Translation. So all my Bible quotes will be from that translation unless I state otherwise. In terms of chronology, we're roughly following the life and timeline of Jesus from his birth through to his death and resurrection. I say roughly because sometimes it makes more sense to follow a particular theme rather than get bogged down in dates and times. And in fact, this is how the Gospels were written. There is a sense of chronology there, but it's not exact. The writers will often shift around locality and timing to suit their own purposes. And if, as we go along, you're like, hang on, I'm not sure I can believe anything you just said, that's totally fine. Stick around, keep an open mind, and see if it starts to make sense or not. I do hope that you find this Year with Jesus greatly informative and personally enriching. Exploring Jesus has been the biggest influence on my own life, and I count it a great privilege to share some of that journey with you. And I appreciate you being a part of it. So where should we start our Year with Jesus? The start of his public ministry? His birth? Well, I want to go back further than that. And it's a big claim, I know, but I want us to go back to the beginning of creation. Why would I do that? Well, that's where the gospel writers start. And the guy who really lays it out in detail is John in the Gospel of John. So there's 4 gospels, that is 4 eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life. Well, 3 of those accounts are called the synoptics, They're general accounts of Jesus' life that are roughly chronological from beginning to end. That's Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And these three accounts have a considerable amount of shared content. The fourth gospel is very different. Most of what is in John's gospel is not found in the other three gospels because the man who wrote it, John, is less concerned about history and chronology and more concerned about philosophy, theology, and broad themes. So let's look at how he starts his gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, let's stop there for a minute. Who or what is this Word that he's talking about? Well, if we jump ahead to verse 14, we get our answer. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So the Son who came from the Father is the Word that became flesh. The original language of this text was Greek, and some translators translate this word as flesh. Others use the phrase human being. It means exactly the same thing. The Word, who is the Son of the Father, became a human being and made his dwelling among us. Literally pitched his tent for a while among us. Now, I mentioned this is a big claim because it is. John is saying that Jesus is the Word of God. He is the Son of God, and that he came from outside earth to earth, and that he possesses glory. So now let's go back to verse 1 and read it again. In the beginning was the Word. So if the Word is Jesus, he didn't turn up for the first time as a baby in Bethlehem. He was there in the beginning. He was with God there in creation. But then John goes even further. He says the Word was God. Now, in many circles, a comment like that would be blasphemous. Muslims recognize Jesus as a prophet, but certainly not equal to God. Jews believe that Jesus was simply a religious leader, and Jehovah's Witnesses teach that this translation is incorrect and should in fact read that the Word was a God. And if the Bible's claim to Jesus' divinity rested just on this one verse, then we might have a problem. But as we go through the Gospels, we're going to see time and time again that Gospel writers were of the firm belief that Jesus was equal with God. So let's read a little bit further. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So this Word is maker of everything we see, the origin of all life, and the light for all humankind. And again, this Word has become flesh and become a human being, come into the very creation he has made and taken on human form. Let's read on. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light, he came only as a witness to the light. Now, don't be confused here. John the writer is writing about another John. That is Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist. He was a man sent from God to witness concerning the light that was coming. And what does John, the gospel writer, say about this coming light? The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. So the picture John is giving here is of a world in darkness. And the Word, who is the source of life and light, comes into that world offering light and life to all who believe. Some do, some don't. But he says everyone who does believe becomes a child of God. The suggestion here, you become a child of God based on your belief that Jesus is the source of life and light. You recognize who he is and you receive him. Personally, I don't like the word Christian. I think it is a misused and such a misunderstood word. In my view, it says more about culture than it does about faith. But from this passage, we can see that the pivotal issue of faith revolves around a response to a person. That person is Jesus, who is the Word of God and became a human being. Receive him and you receive light. You receive life and you become a child of God. For me, this is very powerful. I don't believe in a God far away up in the sky somewhere. I don't believe in an abstract supreme being. I believe in a God who became fully human, who lived in my world and understands me. And this Jesus isn't for me just an inspirational human who I want to aspire to, although he is that, but he is divine. In receiving him, I receive into my life the fullness of God, and that changes me from the inside out. Next session, I'm going to take you back to the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, because when we understand more of what Genesis chapter 1 is saying, we'll be in a better position to understand what John is saying here about Jesus. So for now, if you have any questions or comments on what you've heard, I'd love you to participate in the chat so that I can respond straight away. Or if you prefer, you can send me a direct message and we can discuss things privately there. I'll be perhaps exploring some different models of how the chat might run. So bear with me as we explore some different ways that we can engage in chat. But for now, we're just going to do it with the comments below.